You were told that old Fairfield Academy was not built by today's standards. I know what you're thinking. It's a bit overwhelming, I understand. But follow me to part 4, and together we will learn all about controlled opposition. I'm just messing with you. There ain't no damn lesson on controlled opposition we learn around here. When Connecticutans, Connecticutonians? Well, when those people aren't around, we put our hand over our mouth and go, corrupticate, am I right? Nah, we don't actually do that. Well, I mean, I do, but I don't know about anyone else. You don't know where I'm from yet? All in good time. And lest you think I'm some sort of a elitist, I will be reserving the harshest criticism for my home place. We're just warming up. Did you mess with my settings again, Jim? That's how people get slapped around here. Fetch the baby powder. I'm gonna leave this one alone. This whole combination is just... the joke writes itself. Looks like we've got some sea captains in our future. The evil. I mean, beneficial and completely friendly and neighborly, even. Society. I need to rethink that name if we haven't yet. General. First name Firestone. Or Sky. Or White. Pick your genre. Ooh, I see some juicy things though. Palladium windows. Brick. Gambrel. Spire. Beeb. This is what's called a Victorian cottage. That's a descriptive term for it, but it's the name as well. The Victorian cottage. It was erected in the mid-19th century. And that's all I got for you on that one. There are men of few words. Either that or this survey is just so ancient. This was back when we're just simply making a list. Because that's what I think is going on in America. Hey guys, yeah, go out and survey the land. Tell us what's going on out there. And so they bring it all back and then they devise their plans. That's what I think, yeah. Not too far away from like James Bond villain. And actually, much worse in reality. Here we've got the Clock Turner House. Cool name, if it were the name of a person, but no, there's a hyphen in between. I'll take unnecessary information for 500, Alec. We're told that this guy's got some stunner shades on. Yep, what are you gonna do? Except keep it so real. Wise man once said we keeps it realer than rotoscope does. And it's that quote which I'd like to borrow right now. That one's Paul. And this guy is a very sinister indeed. Ah, he said ominously. Then he got punched in the face and his glasses fell off. But still, he was in fine spirits. He's a chipper fellow. Bup, bup. You don't bup, bup. I bup, bup. Anthropomorphic hour is over. I thought this was one of those flat plastic doorways they have, separate various rooms, grocery store. Then I realized, nope, that's just wood. I didn't know it could get all bendy like that. I mean, I did. That was just a rude way of me pointing it out, or a polite way of me saying something rude. I don't know. That last one, it was built 1805, 1806. Clark family owned it for 100 years. Timed that terribly poorly. I was talking about this. Then we move on to this one. Oh, it's to this one. This one that's just terrible. This is the James Dillon House. And based on conversations with old residents of Easton, coupled with some town records, they have determined that this Jane Dillon House, right here, that we're looking at, we're told that it stands majestically as the sire of all the house northern Easton. This isn't exactly modern stuff here. Relatively ancient survey. Miss Dillon, the present owner, has among her possessions an old cobbler's bench, which is supposedly the one used in this latter tale, and which belongs to Charles Beach, who is a cobbler and who resided here. But even the building date is uncertain. From architectural evidence, a safe guess would be 1710. The worthy of note is the plainness of design, we're told. And they're all in perfect keeping with a house of such advanced age. It is with regret that we note so much mystery surrounding this old homestead, but it is with gratitude that we find the house in such good condition, unspoiled by excessive alterations, and at present in such capable custody. What a finely written paper. That's how it's done. I love it. That might be one of the first nice little bits of the survey I've ever read. A few red pills here and there, and some pretty ridiculous narratives, but never that. This one's, oh, Fairfield, you chicky fucker. Yeah, this here is part of the Fairfield School, I believe, the old academy. And in Fairfield here, we are told that education has always been considered a matter of the greatest importance. But the public schools evidently did not meet the requirements of many of its citizens, for in 1808, a group of people decided to start an academy. Considerable discussion as to the best location, and the present site was one selected. May 1804. That time a resolution was adopted in General Assembly of the state of Connecticut, held in Hartford, or the second evening of May 1804, incorporating the proprietors of the Fairfield Academy in Connecticut. Nothing is said in the records about tuition fees, but for the sum of $4.50, one might attend the academy for 12 weeks. The records tell us that the building was always in need of repairs, as if it were already very old, I added, and in 1865 they wrote that the school and recitation rooms were spacious, well ventilated, and neatly furnished. The large, handsome Franklin stoves were plated at each end of the schoolroom, and inside half blinds were fixed to the windows. They were deemed advisable, these blinds, lest the attention of the pupils might be distracted by the large number of vehicles so constantly passing by. Fairfield Avenue has more than 6 taverns. The spiritual needs of this village have been supplied by this builder, for the lower floor is used for Sunday evening meetings until 1880. In 1865, a gilded ball was placed on the dome, consisted of 60 pieces, valued at $30. The day before the ball was to be placed on the dome, it was opened in the newspaper of the day with an interesting document containing the names of the subscribers to the improvement fund, the mechanics employed, the construction and the donor of the ball, and a list of schools placed in it. And then, when time with its destroying hands rends that ball, posterity will read interest the names of those who, imbued with the same feeling as to their ancestors, endeavored to restore the pristine form of the Fairfield Academy. The time, however, was not the destroying hand that removed the ball. No one knows where it went. The weirdest article section I've ever read in these surveys.
And it makes me wonder.
The students wrote with quill pens, which the teacher had to make by hand. And, yeah, that's the story. I'm a little bit bewildered. Don't quite know what to make of that one.
And it makes me wonder.
At least we can learn a little bit about these, though. So this here is that academy. That's where you go when you did some duty wrong. I don't know. This is the Sherman Parsonage, otherwise known as the Judge Sherman House. Dignified and elegant. Fine old maples. Why, this here was finished in 1816 and was one of the largest and most attractive dwelling houses along the Sound. We are told that the velvet carpets were manufactured to order in England, and as the story goes, you know, these legends about these carpets, they were 7 feet too long. So the lady of the house insisted that wings be added to the room, which enlargement is plainly visible on inspection today. So you're going to add 2 wings to this property because the carpet was too long, rather than just cut the carpet. I don't know. That story, it involves either some real simpletons, though I somehow doubt that, or that story is just a bit too stupid for me to believe. Kind of like the one where it's like billions of balls of gas burning out there forever and forever and forever in the vacuum of space, which is in direct defiance of the science. Or do I know? Is that a tumor? Or that's dope. Whoa. What happened to him? He devolved. Oh, that was terrible. Huh? I don't know what I'm looking at here, but I do like it. This is the Abraham Mead house. If one were to delve into all the volumes written about the Mead family, we are told it would certainly entail a maximum of reading, but it would also ensure some pleasant hours, for they were of a gallant, heroic stock of the early pioneers. Who wrote this? The Meads were direct descendants of one who was a personal friend and physician to Queen Elizabeth of England. The 2 brothers, John and another one, came to America early, John settling in Hampstead with his 2 sons, while his brothers settled in Virginia. John's son, also not confusingly named John, came to Connecticut in 1660. He Captain Mead, Abraham Mead, son of the Deacon Ebenezer. He built this impressive old homestead in 1792, and it's been the Mead family ever since. He learned pottering, and was such an apt pupil that when his time was up, he was immediately taken into the business by his teacher. A distinguished Captain Pottery, he was known by the quaint appellation of Deacon Potter. From his occupation, Captain Mead was prominent in the Revolutionary War, being an officer. In 1777, he was appointed a member of the Committee of Safety, and served until the end of the war. Nothing like safety during war. In this commission, a price was placed on his head, and he was in constant danger from recognized foes and from false friends. After the war, he resumed his pottery business, and it is said he made an entire boatload of pottery and sold it. A boatload? The proceeds being used to pay off a note in the Second Congregational Church, of which he was deacon and treasurer for many years, when he wasn't being a potter soldier. In 1787, he was chosen to be the town treasurer and served in this capacity for 10 consecutive years. Old humble Mead. This Oliver Mead house been in appreciative hands for all this time. No explanation what that is, though, huh? Just going to leave that there. Okay, you're the boss, Connecticut. We'll move on. I mean, who cares? Having your world. Today, something. What we have here is the Jonathan B. Sanford house. That's Sanford, not Stanford, not to be confused with the douchers from the other side of the country. And this here building is in Reading. It is a fine of the sturdy, ample houses built by the New England parishes for their pastors. 1753, we're told, by the Congregational Church of Reading for the Reverend Nathaniel Bartlett, who was the second pastor church. Looks, they even threw in some fine china. Now, this man was a pastor for 57 years, and this is supposed to be one of the longest pastorates in New England. Kept school in his home, where he prepared young men for college. Two of his most famed pupils were Timothy Dwight, who now has a college named after him at Yale, and Joel Barlow, famed poet and statesman. He was also a chaplain during the Revolutionary War, and it is said the attic of that there parsonage was used as a sacred store for munitions. Yes, sir. Lemuel Sanford, not Leland Stanford, who had married one of the Bartlett's daughters, inherited the house from his father-in-law in 1847. Really, the Sanfords, not Stanford, originally from Stowe, were directly descendants of Thomas Sanford, not Stanford, who settled in Milford in 1632. For 3 generations, Mr. Jonathan B. Sanford kept the town records and the probate records of Reading. Oh, really? All these records, as well as the offices, are housed in the L of the house, which you don't say. So they actually owned all of the historical town records and probate records of the entire town of Reading. Really? There's no reason to assume then that, there'd be foul play or anything, Name me like Lemuel Sanford, Now, there are many fine old dwellings along this road, Reading Ridge, but few are so well kept as this here Sanford. Now, the majority of this information comes from the present owner, who is in direct descent from the original builder, talks readily of the house and its distinguished inhabitants, and is apparently rightfully proud relationship to such fine and admirable ancestry. Indeed. Well spoken. Thank God. We'll continue down the famed Red Ridge to see what we can see. Actually, no, we won't. It's your little window. You get to see that area. That's it. That's all you get. We've moved on. So should you. By we, I mean me. And the H-A-B, I mean H-A-B-S, want from me. This appears to be the Taylor Sherman house. That's right in the middle of the humdrum and activity of the business district of this town. Is this here? Some of the older inhabitants of Norwalk recall the mention of the old house as being a one-room building with a one-in chimney, lived in by a one-eyed man. The Shermans were very valued citizens. Taylor Sherman was a very genial social figure, and from this same Sherman clan sprang such men as the famed soldier William Tecumseh Sherman. How did I know it was that Sherman family? Now, the present owner, we're told, is a very public-spirited woman, and even though the property could have been sold many times, is a choice business corner. She's kept the house and probably will continue to hold the house until someone will buy it for the sole purpose of restoration. Miss Elwood refuses to take the L. Would she? Is she? Very gracious about showing the house to those who are appreciative. And this is of 1939. So Miss Elwood is long gone. Almost 100 years ago, my God, this was taken. That's great. You see the stylistic difference here. But propaganda nonetheless. To more, Brian. These number systems can be so fluster-patent. Nonetheless, we persevere in times of extreme hardship. John Osborne House. Yes, sir. This homestead is out on the edge of what was formerly called the Pequot Swamp. Interesting. Swamp, eh? And originally owned by Stephen Osborne. It's still held by descendants of the original owner, at least as far as 1937, when this was written up, and it is not many rods distant from the monument erected by the Sons of Colonial Wars to commemorate the end of the Pequot War, 1637. Mr. Stephen Osborne built this house in 1772. It is said to be the third colonial dwelling erected in that part of town and was left undisturbed by the British when they burned Fairfield in 1779 and they raided various sections of the country along the shore, perhaps because it looks like an abandoned barn. The old Osborne Well, further down the road, had a silver tankard hanging by its side, a vessel brought from England, and here neighbors and travelers were accustomed to quench their thirsts. Tradition has it that the silver tankard which hung by the well, Washington himself refreshed by its service. Yes, everything around here just corroborating everything else, isn't it? Such is the way of New England, no different than Old England. Rather fanciful flourishes for a man in the 1700s. But what do I know? Nothing. Trying to get to that place of bliss, y'all. This is the Woe House. Four-pronged tower in the front. I'm like, whoa. These windows down here on the basement floor. Never seen nothing like that before. The stairs is whoa. The plates is whoa. Half a dozen windows and at least a couple dough. This is the stone house. That's the name. Probably ain't even made of damn stone. Maybe the wall is, though. All we're told about is that it was built in 1721 and it was a 2-story stone. But I mean, I see some brick up in there. I see some brick up in there. I see a 3-eyed alien right there. I seen the usual welcoming middle finger there. And they seem to be obsessed with taking pictures of fireplaces. Fireplaces and foundations, especially these older ones. These ones from the 30s. Weird way to build a house. Always these pictures of any doorway by any staircase. And when they take pictures of things this frequently, you know that they were told to. One wonders why. Back in the 30s, in the prime of their advanced stages of their little take of our world, at least this in this country, you know that there's something shady behind everything. Storm cellars make a lot of sense now. And yep, our two boys, our two friends that just won't stop reminding us. There's something funky going on here. Oh, that's not contrived. Oh, sorry. Yes, you can come in. I happen to have my wagon wheel or whatever this is. You know one of my rules of thumb regarding this stuff. Wagon wheel, always contrived. Anytime you see a wagon wheel, you know you're on a set. True that. And some people might be like, no, my mom's got one as decoration in her backyard. That's decoration is a set. All the more to my point, really. So thank you, Mrs. Strawman. And ooh, this is a creepy looking skeleton guy. What is your secret? Tell me your secrets, friend. What purpose do you serve? Kind of interesting. What is that, a wire back there? Presumably to open the flume, but I don't know. The Batch Elder. Can't make up his mind. The old bachelor, or the Batch Elder, whichever. I thought it was clever. Well, David Lambert is here. He's the one who built this Lambert house. The Lambert influence, when Wilton was organized, gave the name to the settlement as the Lambert ancestors lived in Wilton. Lambert women took the bread from the oven to satisfy the hunger of the British soldiers in their hurried march to Westport after the Battle of Ridgefield in 1777. Are those two sentences even related? The Lambert women, whoever they are, took the bread from the oven to satisfy the hunger of the British soldiers. Here you are, sirs. Take the bread. I know you up. Another British soldier holding a housewife at gunpoint, practically. A bit of bread. See? It must be true, because all these people, their families have little tiny anecdotes. That cup right there, George Washington used it, so it's real. That's the house where the British soldiers went, so you know it's real. That is an old trick. You see, often as we independent researchers get sidetracked away from the event, but the lie is the event. The lie is the only important fact. To me, everything else just supports the lie. The people who create these stories, seems to me, they don't really care whether you believe George Washington had wooden teeth. They don't really care if you believe that a woman gave soldiers bread. Or they don't really care about any of that. They don't mind if you speculate on any of those things. In fact, they're very happy for you to speculate on all those things. Because if you're speculating about a tangential issue, you aren't looking at the event itself. So that they do care that you believe that George Washington was real. If you discover that certain parts of it are fake, witnesses of this and so on are fake, you should also assume that the entire event was fake. If they had a real person, they had real events, they wouldn't need to fake them. There's no reason to fake all the supporting evidence when you have an actual event, when you have an actual historical event happening. You only need to fake supporting evidence when you don't have the real story. As I said, the event is the lie. I believe this is the Dimming house, but I have no real information about it, and it's got some interesting stuff going on down Foundation Park, as we would expect from a house in this era, and that's just, impressive brick house. Totally normal. Totally normal. This is the Major General Cowles house, Cole. We're told it was built in 1803, with no record of any architect, 2 stories, basement, and brick. Not to be confused with the Admiral Cole's house, of course, or the Cole's house of 1650, which are also in Farmington. This General Cole's house stands on the west side of Main Street in Farmington. According to the book entitled Farmington, the house was built by Mr. General Solomon Coles for his son, General George Cole. Francis Nick Cole's article, Old Farmington, which appeared in American Homes and Gardens, states that the house was built in 1808. Miss Florence Gay's notes give the dates as 1803. The first owner became Major General, the highest military officer in the state. He owned a celebrated white horse. How Gandalf of him. The family had fine stables and lands. The house, one of the most dignified in Farmington, was a scene of much gaiety. The generous staircase in the front hall led up 2 full stories past 2 Palladian windows directly to the old ballroom on the 3rd floor. This room originally occupied the entire finished part of the story, taking light both windows, and there are fragments of the old screen, whatever. No mention of, what this is. To me, looks like some sort of a culvert, leading me to believe that this wasn't even a residence. But who am I to challenge the history of old Farmington? No one, that's who. And very fine architectural work all around. If I'm not lazy, I'll insert an applause sound here. I wonder which one I chose. I don't know. Do this live, fool. Well, it's one take. Scream of consciousness. You know what I'm saying? This is the Gideon Wells house. They just love that in Cal. 1780. It was removed from the original site to the rear of the lot and was restored in 1936. Still, though, 2.5 story. They somehow moved the half base. The birthplace of Gideon Wells, who became Secretary of the Navy in President Lincoln's cabinet. Mr. Wells served with great distinction during his term of office. A great deal of credit to his home state, Connecticut, where he was born and educated. The house was used during stagecoach days as a tavern. Weren't those all stagecoach days? Because a new post office to be erected on this site, it was moved from its original location. I see. And it is now restored to an excellent state. But who would know? Really, moved it and rebuilt it, Sure, you're gonna say it's built exactly like the old one, but who would know? Honest question. Look at that little brick foundation right there. Look at that beautiful little curved, fantastic little staircase right there. Look at that little puny-ass, ridiculous-ass window right. What do you think it's doing? Except compromising the integrity of that damn building. Look at the uneven doors here. I don't have a point to make. I'm just saying, look at the stuff. You come up with a point. You do it. I'm tired of doing it. Coming up with millions of points all the time. Some are dumber than hell. Some of them are kind of intriguing. Hell, I never know what's gonna happen. Really, I'm looking for a way to shoehorn this corny-ass song I made in here, but I don't see it happening. So I guess, reluctantly, I'll dive into this Lydia Sigourney house. From this side, she's a real banger. Back from the back side there, not quite so much. Oh, wait, maybe it's something different. 1820, this was built. Yes, sir. Mrs. Charles Sigourney built this. Charles Sigourney's father moved here. 1799, opened a hardware store, and 22 years later was chosen to be the second president of the Phoenix Bank. Now, why would they have a Phoenix Bank out there in Connecticut? That's interesting. Not like they're Phoenicians or anything, so it's weird. He was instrumental in the founding of Washington College, now Trinity College. In 1819, he married Liddy Huntley, who published her first book, Moral Pieces in Prose and Verse, which was followed by nearly 60 volumes, selections of which were reprinted in England in 1848 under the name of the Coronal. Mrs. Sigourney, in her Letters of Life, gives a description of the house, using such language as,
long line of buildings stretched in the rear of the mansion, unmarked by ornament, yet a pleasing architectural proportion. The classic taste of my husband being obvious in the slightest detail. Every part of this establishment, from the basement to the capitals of the columns, have been executed after a model drawn by himself.
Oh my god, he modeled something after something that he himself modeled. Amazing. Having been so thoughtful of comfort as to wish the coolness of an abode in summer not invaded by the fumes and odors of culinary preparation, he erected a wing which contained a large secondary kitchen, which, having also every convenience for laundry, was constantly used for that purpose. With the exception of President Washington and President Polk, every president of the United States called upon Mrs. Sigourney. What the f*** does that mean? She's a lady of the evening? Or what? They calling her what? Wash her clothes? Many of this house's best features were chosen and used in the design for the Connecticut House, the Louisiana Purchase Exposition. Oh, really? You would have to be associated with that racket, wouldn't you? And all that for just one picture, though it is quite a lovely building. And what have we here? Am I in Pennsylvania? I'm not familiar with this part of the country. After these surveys, I'm probably going to be one of the world's foremost experts on the United States of America. But no, you don't have the credentials, and you never get to the right college. You don't get to call yourself a researcher. What you do is just search. It's not research. We research. That's my impression of the historian, looking down upon me with disdain. Fine, go ahead, research that one. Go ahead. I'm over it. There's nothing about it. This is also the Sigourney Street residence, which was moved, but I'm not sure if this is the move or after the move, or the move or during the move, or what moved exactly. Hell, I don't know. If y'all ain't gonna use that, then this here's where Squire Elisha Pitkin used to live. Do you know who Elisha is? I shall tell you who Elisha is. You see, John Crow was an ancestor of Mr. Elisha Pitkin, who was one of the first settlers and landowners of East Hartford in 1639. Influential family. Stories of the Revolutionary War, of which this town claims a large share, are abound. Encamping the French troops in 1781 when they're on their way from Newport to join Washington's forces. The troops under command of Count de Rochambeau was subordinate only to Washington, but many times in this town, boarded at Squire Elisha Pitkin's. This house, tales of the barbecues in the meadows have told, and the huge carcasses of oxen roasted whole, the beast having been beaten almost to a jelly while still alive, to fit them for the fastidious palates of the foreigners. Jesus, what the fuck? What assholes. What a horrific statement. Beaten to a jelly while alive. Cattle roasts and soup makings held in Squire Pitkin's yard. Well, I hope these people burn in hell, because that's cruel. The pioneer of the Pitkin family in this country was William Pitkin. He was, by profession, a lawyer and appointed king's attorney. His son was educated by his father in his profession of the law. Oh God, if only that were easy. Honorable Colonel Joseph Pitkin, son of William Pitkin, was a representative of Hartford for a great many years. Elisha Pitkin, Esquire, son of Colonel Joseph Pitkin, was a trader, and his house had a reputation for hospitality. A graduate of Yale, a magistrate, and a prominent citizen. What the hell went on in this country? Beating oxen to a jelly to fit the palate of the French, or staying in your town. None of this makes any sense. Beating oxen. That's disturbing. We did it for you, French people. Never forget. This is the Rocky Hill Congregational Church. And this is a ghoul. There stands the church. Dedicated in 1908. Rocky Hill was a section of Wethersfield, and it wasn't until 1843 that it was incorporated as a separate township with political autonomy. In 1720, 23 inhabitants of this section partitioned town meeting in Wethersfield to grant 60 acres of land for church use. The first step in this movement took place 7 years later, when June 7, 1727, the organization of the Congregational Church was effected. It was built, was used successfully for some 80 years, with all the common discomforts of the early places of worship. Here they misspell it as A-R-S-H-I-P, but I think that might be a little bit of a Freudian slip. The present structure was paid for by taxation, which is typical of the early church. Its slave quarters, its gallery, its lofty pulpit, its unheatedness. The ball on the vane at the top of the steeple was said to have been measured with corn, and found to have a capacity of 36 gallons. Now why would there be a ball on the vane measured with corn, found to have a capacity of 36 gallons? What are they talking about? The front of the building, unlike the modern religious edifices, contains 6 windows. Calvin Chapin was served in this capacity for over 50 years. probably its most beloved brother, one of the most important clerics in New England, and his counsel was regarded with deference as coming from a man of clear intelligence. He had a widespread reputation as a wit, and all this fact has never been verified. It is often maintained that Dr. Chapin was offered the presidency of Yale University. His most ardent efforts were on behalf of total abstinence. So one can see the vast influence a man of this caliber must have wielded over his own particular parish. Yes, you can see. I mean, I can't see. I don't know what they're talking about. We see the chandeliers and the type of opulence that I've never understood that the church has. It doesn't look like a face or anything. Nothing about the construction or anything like that. Just it wasn't and then it was. Donate money. And also abstain. From what? From everything, Jimmy. This is Lieutenant William King Place, which, now let me stop you there. This needs to be differentiated from the King House of the same town. That's not confusing at all. This is Lieutenant William King, or Billy King, or his son, Ensign Billy King. There's some who believe, some heathens, that it may have been built as early as 1722, but we think here in this survey, more like 1750. We are also inclined to believe that Lieutenant William King was the original builder. It used to be called Stony River, this place was, Suffield, and considered part of the colony of Massachusetts until 1749. James King is listed as number 58 of the 101st original proprietors and grantees of land in the town. Lieutenant William King received much of his father's estate and left on his death the best landed interest in Suffield. He was a farmer and a weaver and a lieutenant. He was a capable businessman and much respected by the town people. He was elected selectman and served for many years, along with other positions in the town government. In his will, he left £10 to Reverend Ebenezer Gay to be used to purchase furnishings for the communion table of the first Suffield Parish Meeting House and 4 silver communion cups, still in use by the society, a part of the provision of his legacy, of course. Everyone around here has a silver cup that they've been using for 300 years. It's a violation of health code, no doubt. The house has a lean-to, which has caused considerable discussion. May have been built previously to the front of the house, which the lean-to is the only part of the house that has a cellar, so other sources claim that the lean-to was original with the rest of the house. The present owner, we're told, Mrs. Henry M. Clark Jr., is very cooperative to those who can appreciate the very fine corner cupboards, the mantels and fireplaces, the fine staircase with 3 balusters to the tread, and the summer beams in the 2 front rooms. If you can't appreciate that, then she'll tell you to leave. Old Suffield, we're told, is so abundantly endowed with many early American dwellings of such high standard. And there she is now, maybe. You'll appreciate my fine corner cupboard, or you'll leave. And appreciate them we shall, even though you're a little crazy, lady. This is Captain Jonathan Sheldon House on Sheldon Street. If your house is named after the street you're on, then, you can be in the survey. That's what it seems like to me, anyway. The Captain Sheldon House, also known as the Jonathan Sheldon Place, depends on, how cool you are. It's claimed to be the oldest house here in Suffield, built in 1723 by, you'll never guess, but Captain Jonathan Sheldon. Wheeled from son to son in the Sheldon family, and then sold to the Owens, and again wheeled from son to son. Taken by Sheldon, Hawkins, and Lehman by a foreclosure of a mortgage. Oh, Sheldon happened to be also the mortgage company, huh? Of course. More seems to be known of the interesting people who lived in this old house, or who have sprung from the Sheldon stock. The builder was the 14th and youngest son of Isaac Sheldon, the settler from the town of Windsor. Jonathan Sheldon gave to 5 of his sons each a separate farm around the old homestead and farm on Sheldon Street. Most of the sons married from amongst the neighbors, and inaugurated an interesting and growing family along Sheldon Street. After a heated struggle of 5 years with the parent Society of Suffield, the West Suffield Society was formed, and the meeting house erected here. Mary Sheldon, the youngest daughter, and her husband, Reverend John Graham, the first pastor of the new society, took up residence to the meeting house. They gave birth to the celebrated Dr. Sylvester Graham, who was born the youngest of 17 children. His name is one of fame, not only in his native town, but probably the world over because of his connection with Graham bread and crackers. Also, besides being an orator and preacher of note, he was a staunch advocate of the vegetarian theory, now called the Graham system. The editor of the Graham magazine in Boston, and his essay of this publication on bread and bread making so ired the bakers of that town he was mobbed. Very strange story. That's who Graham crackers are named after? This reverend? Man, Connecticut, this is the weirdest one yet. Every city or town, however small, has some house lived in by some celebrity that's just bizarre. I don't think it was going to give me this much to think about so early, but it do be dough. Might have to call this one early to process this. This is the Hezekiah Chaffee House. We're not making very many Hezekiahs anymore, are we? The land on which the Chaffee House now stands was purchased by Dr. Chaffee in 1757 and probably built between 1760 and 70. No date has been established, but there's an iron latch on the door of the southwest room which has 1771 picked into the handle. Although that could be how many days they were locked in there. Dr. Chaffee was born in Massachusetts in 1731, came to Hartford to establish a druggist's business and pursue his profession as a doctor. Dr. Druggist. Settling in Windsor, married a woman and had 5 children. A story's been told, the present owners of an auction held at the Chaffee House in 1819, there was a young boy who bid off a cracked glass mug which had a metal band around it. The mug broke after a short time, and this band was found to be of pure silver. Then the story came out that the mug was one used by General Washington when he was entertained at at dinner at the Chaffee House. I quit. Psych. The next stretch of the survey is an odd one. We go through residential home after residential home, each in a different town. I'm assuming selling the idea of the narrative for the area. The trashy part is it's usually just one picture per property, which is unacceptable as far as I'm concerned. As a connoisseur of these science surveys, I find it to be completely ridiculous. I'm going to try to tear through them record speed, so that I don't waste any of your time. It's like, let me just warm up a little bit. To sit in solemn silence in a dull, dark dock in a pestilential prison with a lifelong lock, awaiting the sensation of a short, sharp shock from a cheap and chippy chopper on a big black block. Imagine an imaginary menagerie manager managing an imaginary menagerie. 33 thieves thought that they had thrilled the throne throughout Thursday. Green glass globes graciously glow greenly. Near an ear, a nearer ear, a nearly eerie ear. Rory the warrior and Roger the warrior were reared wrongly in a rural brewery. Amidst the midst and fiercest frost, with barest wrists and stoutest boasts, he thrusts his fist against the post and still insists he sees the ghost. What a to-do to die today at a minute or two to two. A thing distinctly hard to say, but harder still to do. Give the gift of a grip top sock, a clip drape ship-shaped hip-hop sock, then slip, slap, stick, slip-shot stock, the grip top sock, flop, a slap-knack, knit-lock, knock-knee, knickerbocker sock, or top lock, a rucksack sock, ropper, copper, pot. Glen glowered and grimaced at Glen's gleaming greens. Blue, black, plugs, blood. Giggle, gaggle, gurgle. Okay, I think I'm good to go. This one. This is the Watson House, built in 1809. There is zero information about it. This house, known as the Moore House, was built by Samuel Moore in 1700. In 1792, the house was repaired and slightly altered by Colonel Eli Moore in Windsor, Connecticut. This is the house opposite Church, South Canaan, Connecticut. And South Canaan, and there is no information about it. This is the Martin Rockwell House, also with no information. This is the Adelphi Institute. Again, no information. This is the Hosford House. No information. This is the House on Center Green, Harwinton, Connecticut. No information. Phelps Tavern. At this writing, one of Litchfield's best-known landmarks, famous Phelps Tavern, is being demolished by the wreckers' hammers. This hotel is the oldest in Litchfield County and probably in the state in point of continuous service. Built in 1786 by David Huell, a successful merchant of the town who had conducted a tavern about a mile east of Litchfield. He was, besides being a tavern keeper, a dealer in the ladies' stuffed shoes, exchanged sole leather for cash or flax, whatever that means. He was Litchfield agent for a state lottery for raising money for public works and was a joint publisher of the Monitor, the town journal. The tavern was later sold to John Phelps. However, its probably best-known proprietor is the late Eugene L. Phelps. This historic inn, which stood overlooking the green, had a lofty ballroom on the top floor. Litchfield was the home of one of the earliest law schools, that being the one conducted by Judge Tapping Reeve, which knew students such as Aaron Burr, Joseph Calhoun, Uriah Tracy, James Gold, who later himself conducted the school. The town was also the home of Miss Pierce's Female Academy, one of the first women's educational institutions in America, and both these schools made good use of the facilities of Phelps Tavern for their social functions. The invitations to such events were sometimes printed on the backs of old playing cards, and the Litchfield Historical Society have in their possession some of these. Probably the most famous ball ever to be held here was one in honor of Lafayette in 1824. The building, which is now being demolished, was considerably remodeled from its original state, much of this being done after a fire in 1911. Mr. Lewis Bird is the present property owner. He's expected to replace this building with a new hotel, and although Litchfield will be losing a most famous landmark, it will likewise be gaining a much more modern hostel. This structure erected in 1786. It had stone foundations and brick chimneys, 3 1/2 stories, as you can tell by the little windows down here. No, don't demolish us. Too late for you. Connecticut doesn't care. This is the first Congregational Church opposite Norfolk Green in Norfolk, Connecticut, and there is no further information listed. This is the old shop and post office. That's all we are told about it here. And it's in Sharon, Connecticut. This is the house opposite Head of Green, we are told, with again, no information. This old world beauty is the House Green and DeForest Suites, Watertown, Connecticut. No further information, and sadly, it's the only picture we get. This is the Masonic Temple. It's Temple of Solomon. No information about it. This is the Congregational Church, 1816 in Town Square, Woodbury. That's it. That's all you get, boys. Jonathan Warmer Homestead in Chester. Here's a couple little belated pictures of this old Solomon Temple. G for Grand Architect. This is the Jonathan Warner Homestead in Chester. No information given. This is the Alsop House. At least we get multiple pictures of it. And what a beauty. Really, beautiful, beautiful homes. Wish I knew more about this. Wish I knew more about these ionic columns. Wish I knew more about all this stuff. But no, Connecticut's being very frugal with their information they're withholding on us. This one here is the Alsop House. It's in Middleton, Connecticut. Unique for the many fine frescoes which adorn the walls and ceilings, of superior execution, classical inspiration, fine rich color, and the excellent drawing and decorative quality, and distinctly Pompeian in style, but as a whole, a more subdued. Gods, goddesses, dancing girls, cupids, you know, the usual classical accompaniment of birds and flowers. The house was built in 1838 by Richard Alsop, who died before it was completed. His widow, a French woman, completed it, and the furnishings and decorations are of the prevalent Empire style. The walls were not decorated until the furniture had been installed. That's a very important note. It is believed that the Italian artist Constantino Bremidi, who did the frescoes of the National Capitol, did these in the Alsop House. Oh, really? You mean the guy that doctored up the dome in the Capitol building? And, like, put a George Washington intermixed with like a bunch of Greek gods. You mean that guy? Oh, well, his work is famous. What's he doing? Watercolor here? These are most unimpressive. But don't tell the French woman that. We have within these paintings consist of a figure of Erato with a lyra painted to represent a white marble statue, a smaller figure of Juno beneath a large urn, a figure of Victory with a wreath in her hand, also beneath an urn. There is a glass dome in the roof. There are large panels and festoon frieze in sections. The staircase will have female figures 6 feet high in painted niches, one of which is an exact copy of one of Canova's dancing girls. Can you imagine? Medallions of fruit and flowers. I'll refer you to the book Early American Wall Paintings by Edward B. Allen, published by Yale, for the full list of those no doubt very impressive frescoes that were barely visible in this washed out photography. Thus is the glory of the Historic American Building Survey, Connecticut. Thank you very much. This here is the Deacon Samuel Hall House. John Hall, who came from Kent, England, settled in Cambridge in 1633. He removed to Hartford, Connecticut in 1639 and subsequently became surveyor of highways. In 1650 he moved to Middleton, of which town he was one of the early settlers. Samuel Hall, of the third generation of the Middleton Hall, settled first in the Middletown upper houses, now Cromwell. February 10, 1716 was named deacon of the church. Later he moved to East Middleton, now Portland, where he purchased a farm, appointed deacon of the Congregational Church on the 9th of November, and held the office during life. The present owners of this house, which was built sometime between 1732 and 1733, I suppose, Mrs. Anna and Ayala Churchill, are the direct line of descendant from the first John Hall. The entire Hall ancestry shows them to be very popular, civic-minded, and church-minded people. The Deacon Samuel Hall house, which stands here and which the present owners live, is in good condition for its 2 centuries of age and contains very interesting details on a fine corner cupboard. Ugh, these people in their corner cupboards. Oh, there it is. Rawr, fine indeed. Look at this pathetic corner. Where's your cupboard, loser? That's what I thought. This is the Wheeler Beecher house. Amongst the fine old mansions, well built, that dot the hills and valleys of Connecticut, you will find this one, sitting a few hundred feet north of the center of Bethany, facing the main road. This old house, built for Darius Beecher by the famed architect David Hoadley in 1801, attracts the attention of the most casual passerby. The very excellent taste in the design speaks well of the intellect and pocketbook of its long-ago builder, and more to its pocketbook, you ask me. But the builder of the house was a very wealthy man at the time. I reiterate, the house was built, but it is said that he went west with his family and there lost his entire fortune. Later, the house was occupied by Abraham Beecher, who in no way was related to the builder. Never. It's now the home of the Gale Electric Company. The edifice is a gem, and should it ever be demolished, art collectors would fight for even a bit of doorway, a mantle, or even an arch, so beautifully are the separate parts constructed. It's a typical example of David Hoadley's work, and one of the most beautiful examples of true colonial architecture in all of New England. I stand by that statement. The front door is distinguished by tall, fluted pillars. The walk is gracefully flagged. There are no less than 10 fireplaces. The garret, curiously enough, is a brick smoke room, which was used for the curing of pork and beef, and cancer. The huge ballroom on the second floor was the scene. This great hall was used for social affairs of the local church and others, for the regular town meetings, and for many years for the meetings of the Masonic Lodge. The present owners cooperate pleasantly with those appreciative of seeing this interesting structure, and cheerfully point out the magnificent details which make this a sterling monument to the work of David Hoadley. But don't mention the lack of corner cabinets, or they will be pissed. And the elephant in the room is the rudely abused fireplace. So I wouldn't mention that either, unless you like to get slapped again. Jimmy, give me the baby powder. This is the Harrison Lindsley house, of which there is no information. A tidy little pillar. What seems sort of offset there with the roof like that. But it seems to be a theme.
And it makes me wonder.
This is the George Baldwin house. The owner's name is Daniel Doody. The architect is believed to have been Ithiel Town. If you can believe that. That was bad. This small Greek revival house was erected about 1832 by George Baldwin, of course. Baldwin the builder, from a design believed to have been executed by Ithiel Town, the architect. The peculiar features of the house were the built-in wall chimneys, of which there were 4, one from each of the 4 rooms on the first floor, which have been recently removed. The only thing peculiar about that is why you even pointed it out. We got the usual foundational issues. It's unnecessary, but what do I know? Mr. Baldwin, you can do whatever you want. Free country, or you used to be. When you lived here, it was. This happened on your watch, Baldwin. I'll never forget. This is the Acadian house in Guilford. 2-story structure. All of the interior trim has been removed. This was built in 1670 by Joseph Clay. The chimney field stone is laid in clay. The foundations are also laid in clay, and the architect's name is Clay. Nothing to see here. In 1670, Mr. Clay, if I say Clay again, I swear to God, I'm gonna slap myself, built, get the baby powder, Jimmy. It is hinted in the records that this was the house occupied by Acadian refugees. 16 out of the 200 of those refugees placed in Connecticut were landed in Guilford in 1755 when a British ship with the Acadians on board proceeded down the Atlantic coast through Long Island Sound, landing prisoners in various towns which were ordered to take care of them. Few people know the existence of this trapdoor. Wait, what trapdoor? In the upright wall wall of the cellar room is a wooden trapdoor. The remains of an ancient rope shows it was meant to be opened, as all doors are. Few people know of the existence of this trapdoor. No one knows where it leads to or why it is there. So you didn't open it when you did the survey? What the hell's that? Well, I know of its existence, and so do you guys. Let's go to the Acadian house and demand to see what's in the trapdoor. Maybe there's still some Acadians down there. Hell, I don't know. Maybe there's gold. If you guys want to go there and ruin our lives with greed, I mean, I'm down, dude. Hit me up. I'll meet you out there. Is this Baldwin house or what? I'm supposed to tell you. This isn't even my damn house. This is the Baldwin house with what has the trapdoor. We know about your trapdoor, sir. We're coming. Freaking Baldwins. Hanging out with the same two little sketchy little... Oh, let me guess. Gotta compliment the corner cupboard. Seems to be his thing here. Weird ass Connecticut. This here is the Grace Church. The owner is the Grace Church. Date of erection 1820. The architect is David Hoadley, the only architect ever mentioned. This church in Hamden ranks among the oldest parishes in Connecticut. This church was built on the east side of the road, near the residence of Harmon Wakefield, whomever that is. The first recorded election of the church wardens was in 1800. All this time, the church seems to have remained unfinished, which in those times, a committee was instructed to purchase material sufficient to build a pulpit, which in those times was not an expensive affair. They were so massive and elaborate as to be the most costly part of the church. I guess this is the only picture. The society in the church voted to extend the limits of the society, so it might embrace the whole town of Hamden. I don't understand that sentence. In any case, a committee of 5 was appointed, and the church was completed in 1820, and a Bible, still in good preservation, was presented to the church on August 1820, by Charles A. Vander Hinval. The church was consecrated on the first Thursday in 1821. A year later, what the hell did they wait so long for? On May 3rd, 1899, the Great Fire of this church seriously happened, and the church was not used for divine service until decorations were complete. Finally, it opened in January 1900, and is still the active parish with it was in years gone by. To the Moses Ford House. Here she stands, this historic old dwelling built about 1769 by Moses Ford, whose family name is mentioned prominently in the history of Hamden, and it's still painted in the red hue so typical of old dwellings. The old charm. The house makes a very pretty picture in this, amid the modern structures of this residential section. It is a house of 1.5 stories. True. The house contains an interesting corner cupboard, which was taken from an old house in Northford. Oh, Mr. Moses, I see. Couldn't afford your own corner cupboard, huh? You had to go pilfering them from Northford. History has it that Charles Goodyear made the famous gum boots melting mistake, which mothered his invention of vulcanizing rubber in this house. What the hell is Charles Goodyear doing in this house? Experimenting with vulcanized rubber. Another bit of New Haven history connected with this homestead is that Benedict Arnold's first wife died here. Her remains are now in the crypt, along with the crypt keeper. The house is especially remarkable as being the oldest, the grandest, and the most perfect dwelling of the colonial period to be found. What? This building was burnt to the ground intentionally on September 25th, 1936. Why? I don't know. Don't chew with your mouth full. Oh, look at that. Just underneath the old stone there, we see brick. To no one's surprise. And what's down here, I wonder? Care to tell us, Hemingways? This is the Ward Heitman house. Yep. No information given. So just take a look, but don't touch anything. Admire the corner cupboard. That's what we do here. Admire those German steins. And keep it moving, buddy. Hello. What have we here? Just look at these guys. Look at them. Just look at them. The Widow Smith house, which is built of brick, probably from the nearby brickyards of North Haven, was probably built by Samuel Hemingway, which has been destroyed. All the Hemingways in this section sprang from the same ball sack, and included among the descendants were such distinguished personalities as Jacob Hemingway and Merritt Hemingway, who founded M. Hemingway and Sons, the silk manufacturer, whose name has become a household word via their products. A few years ago, destiny jeopardized this old structure with fire, but it is with warmth to our hearts we realize that this same destiny controlled the flames after only a minimum of destruction. The present owner is Mrs. Baleslaw Dapkovich. That's a name, Baleslaw? Seems a little fucky if you ask me. Oh, look. Well, Jimmy, you know any song? All right, we'll give it a shot.